into the March 11th meeting of the governing body. If you will give your attention, please, to Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala for the invocation, and then stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I'll be reading a poem from the iconic American poet Adrian RHID. What kind of times are these? There's a place between two stands of trees where the grass grows uphill, and the old Revolutionary Road breaks off into shadows. Near a meeting house abandoned by the persecuted who disappeared into those shadows. I've walked there picking mushrooms at the edge of dread, but don't be fooled. This isn't a Russian poem. This is not somewhere else, but here. Our country moving closer to its own truth and dread, its own ways of making people disappear. I won't tell you where the place is, the dark mesh of the woods, meeting the unmarked strip of light. Ghost-ridden crossroads, leaf mold paradise. I know already who wants to buy it, sell it, make it disappear. And I won't tell you where it is. So why do I tell you anything? Because you still listen. Because in times like these, to have you listen at all, it's necessary to talk about trees.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Keller. Here. Valdivia Alcala.
Here.
Ortiz.
I'm here, hot.
Banks.
Here.
Kell.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Dobler.
Here.
Duncan. And Hofer.
Here.
All right, we have 9 present.
Thank you. Move on to presentations. Madam Clerk?
Okay, presentations, we have the,
No, I have appointments, sorry.
yeah, no worries. Okay, so appointments, A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Pedro Concepcion to the Noto Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill a term ending March 11th, 2027.
Okay. You've heard appointment read. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Valdivia Acala, second by Councilwoman Ortiz. We still have one missing council person. Can we vote by acclamation still? Or do we want to go roll call? Okay, we'll do roll call until he shows up. Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Kell.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Dobler.
Yes.
Hofer.
Yes.
Hiller. Sorry, Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
Hiller.
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
And Banks.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, I know Mr. Concepcion is not here with us this evening, but in recognition of him continuing to serve, I would appreciate a round of applause for him. Thank you. Okay, move on to item number 3. Madam Clerk.
First, we have a presentation of the Metropolitan Topeka Airport Authority's annual update.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. I'll ask Curtis or
Mike Munson and Curtis Dean
to lead us through this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Munson, and I am honored to be here tonight. I am one of the 5 members of the MTAA Board of Directors. And tonight, along with Curtis Sneeden and myself, have Brian Armstrong, who works at Bartlett and West, and Carlos Cortez, owner and operator of Cortez Transportation, here with us tonight. As everyone is aware, the MTAA is responsible for the management and operation of Topeka's aviation assets, which includes Topeka Regional Airport, Philip Billard Airport, and our business park at Forbes Field, Topeka Regional. Our mission is to support the economic development, enhance regional air transportation, and provide safe and efficient aviation services for commercial and general aviation needs alike. The MTAA works closely with businesses, with different government agencies, and community stakeholders to maximize the assets we have at our 2 airports and our business air park. Eric Johnson, the MTAA president, was hoping to be here tonight, and I apologize he isn't able to make it. He had a family emergency that involved a surgery, so he's at the hospital right now with his wife. Along with me is Curtis Sneeden, and I'd like to welcome Curtis. He is about a year and a half in with the MTAA, and we brought Curtis on board to be our development director. So we're very excited to speak with you tonight and provide an update.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Curtis Sneeden, Director of Development for the MTAA. I've just come from a meeting about an extraordinarily exciting opportunity here in Topeka that involves our Air National Guard unit, and it involves aviation. Several of you are there, so I kind of have to watch myself. If I sound like I've had too much Red Bull, it's because I just came out of this meeting learning about something that we as a community could really go out and conquer. It's exciting stuff. That being said, as Chairman Munson just noted, the MTAA is your airport authority here in Topeka. I have found that I haven't come across a group yet who begrudges me taking a step back and framing up who we are, where we came from, and what we do in this community. So just a reminder, the Airport Authority was created in 1974 following the deactivation of Forbes Air Force Base. And in 1978, the Joint Authority was created by virtue of Kansas statute. The voters of Shawnee County created this authority to do the things you see on the screen there: acquire, own, maintain, et cetera, generally improve our aviation assets. And as Mike noted, we think in terms of 3 realms here: the Topeka Regional Airport, which most of us just refer to as Forbes, our Topeka Regional Business Center, the Industrial Park, and then finally Philip Billard Airport. And I would like to just remind you about the way we are organized, and maybe Mike will pitch in on this a little bit, but we do have our board of directors, 2 of whom are appointed by the county, 3 by the city. You can see their names there. Eric Johnson is our president. This last year, the board did some very good work to update their bylaws. They implemented a code of conduct. They, next slide, please. They established several new committees, all of which help that body act in a more supportive way and a more effective way to help drive our mission out there. So thanks to Mike and all of the directors for helping sort of advance the board. You can see there, that gives you a sense of the way the company's organized. We've got 6 departments, and the largest of those is our police force, police and fire out there. We also have a fairly large maintenance crew and various other folks who do administration, finance, economic development. That gives you a sense of who your airport authority is. Our revenue comes mainly from 2 large sources. One is the property tax. We're on the mill levy sheet, just like the city is, just like the school boards are. And we also get a larger portion of our revenue from rent and fuel sales at both of our airports. We take our job very seriously to manage those assets, and we think of all of the taxpayers in Shawnee County as our shareholders, and it's our job to manage their resources for them. So let's talk about what's happened. Over at Billard, there have been some exciting developments, and many of these you know about, but we're pulling them together here in summary. You know that we've got a new terminal building there. Many of you were there for the ribbon cutting on that in last January. We have a new food service provider, Sky Restaurant. If you haven't had a chance to try them out, I hope you will. That's a terrific place to eat, and we are impressing not just local patrons, but also aviators flying in to try the place. I've seen that firsthand, and it's exciting to see people visiting Topeka just because of that. The MTA functions as what we call a fixed-based operator at Billard Airport, which, to put it very briefly, means we're the ones who put the gas in your airplane over there. There's a lot more to it than that. There is a range of services we provide, but thanks to the high-quality service that our team provides over at Billard, we've seen a marked uptick in our military clientele, namely the Black Hawk helicopters. They have a choice where to go, and they like coming to Billard because of the way they get served.
And Curtis, if I might mention too, I don't think either Curtis or myself have been down there when a plane hasn't landed at Billard, and you make contact with the pilots and passengers, and you realize they're from out of state, and they used to land at some other airport in Kansas or Nebraska for gas, but they've now diverted to our fixed base operator, Top City Fuel, because the fuel is less expensive and the service is a lot better.
Exactly. That's the whole point. We are doing our best to, restore the facilities over there, the T hangars. We're working on improving the maintenance operation. We're very pleased that one of our tenants who is in a particular line of business, remote sensing from an airplane, has expanded their operations and taken over our repair shop over there. And they're doing an excellent job, again, attracting clients from other airports who say, well, let's go over to Topeka. They have really good repair people there. So all things taken as a whole, the individuals over there at Billard are really reestablishing that as a really energized airfield in the Midwest. So going forward, we are looking forward to the establishment of a flight academy there at Billard. We have a flight school there now, but one of our tenants came to us last year and said, I have an idea, let me expand this thing. So we worked with them, and they will be rehabilitating one of our buildings there and growing that flight academy, building a new hangar to support it, and again, drawing customers and planes from elsewhere, and that is generally the name of the game. We are looking forward to installing a new fuel farm, which just means the tanks that the fuel is kept in. The current fuel farm is quite old. I think those tanks are actually literally older than any of us. And so it's time to replace those tanks, and we plan to install some new technology to make them a little more flexible. We have projects to extend the runways and improve some of the taxiways and complete the fence that goes around the airfield. Last year, we encountered that project, and it gave us a good opportunity to engage with the neighborhood up there. And there were some conversations that were tough but healthy and ended up being really good conversations. And I personally have gained some friendships out of that. Going forward, this project will be completed in a way that I think will align with our role of being good neighbors up there. So looking forward to getting that completed. Let's go down to Forbes or Topeka Regional. We have installed a new fuel farm down there that is servicing the aircraft that use that field. We are completing a taxiway project that has to do with realigning one of our taxiways, and it's really quite astounding. If you look at it on Google Earth, it seems minimal, it seems sort of trivial. We're moving one of our taxiways, but when you go out there, it's this unbelievably vast field of concrete that had to be moved. It was necessary to stay compliant with regulations about such things, but it also links nicely to what we were talking about earlier this afternoon, some of us, the possibility that the 190th might be bringing a new type of airframe to Topeka. That taxiway is necessary to make sure that we're compatible with that new use. Hopefully, most, if not all of you got to the air show, the Thunder Over the Heartland air show this summer. We're very appreciative of one of our premier tenants out there, Veris Aviation, who basically put that on. If you were there, you know that It was kind of a gift to this community. It was an amazing experience, and we're very pleased with how that went, and hopefully it will be repeated every couple of years. It's a way of establishing, again, what we've got going here aviation-wise. Various Aviation is expanding their footprint, and so we are eager to see them grow. We've also enjoyed a substantial growth in our rental income because of some concentrated work by my team. I have an administrator named Dina who works very hard to please our tenants out in the industrial park and attract new tenants, and we're doing a great job at kind of growing that side of the business, and we intend to keep pushing it.
And Curtis, if I may, from a board perspective, at our last meeting, we got a report that we were outside of our budget by $300,000 on gross rental income, and that was to the positive. So Curtis, team, Eric, and team's doing a great job trying to find ways to alleviate the tax burden on our citizens here in Shawnee County. So, thank you.
So let's talk about a couple of things that we have coming in going forward out at Forbes. One of them,
Stuck on me here.
okay, picture if you will. We are currently in the process of a project to remodel our offices out there. If you've been out there, you know that they are well ahead of their time from a 1963 point of view, but it's time for them to be modernized. We need new technology, and we are working to make that happen. We are also, we've been delighted to kind of learn that our own in-house maintenance crew, I'm being a little facetious because we already knew this, but it's been demonstrated that we have this in-house capability to do a lot of the construction work that will be required. So we're looking forward to some substantial savings and playing to our own talent out there to get that work done. In the interest of time, I'd like to close on two of our most conspicuous initiatives, and one of them you've already heard about, and that is the construction of a large hangar at Forbes Field. We are in the process of trying to put the financing puzzle together for the construction of an 80,000 square foot hangar. That sort of enclosed space for aviation is in high demand, and it's relatively rare. And we are beyond confident that once we get it built, it will be filled. In fact, we are in conversations right now with a company that is very eager to come to Topeka if we can figure out a way to connect the dots and get that structure built. And we look forward to that hangar leading to further development. And then finally, we are very excited about an initiative that we are embarking on. It's been sort of stewing for quite a while, but just in the last couple of months, we are pursuing aggressively the Get There From Here initiative, which means bringing back passenger air service to Forbes. We have data at our disposal now, which makes it very clear that hundreds of Topekans every single day, every day, drive over to Kansas City so that they can fly to one of three places: Phoenix, Orlando, or Las Vegas. Accordingly, it only makes sense to reach out to airlines that go to those places and tell them that they've got a ready audience here that will fill their planes if they will start a route out of Topeka. There's a lot more to it than that, and I would love to spend time with all of you to go into the details of why we feel like we've got a winning recipe in place right now, but look forward to telling you more about the return of passenger service to Topeka. With that, Mike will be happy to answer all your questions.
Questions for the gentleman? Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, when we had commercial airlines before, what did we learn from that to now we feel more prepared to be able to?
I love that question. And that is the question. I actually have put together a presentation that's premised on that. It says 10 years ago, this happened. This time is different. 10 years ago, this time is different. So we couldn't be more in sync. For one thing, we learned that follow the data. Okay, I wasn't in the room back then, but I'm given to understand that the decision to go with the route that we had back then was sort of seemed to make sense, and it possibly did. I mean, a lot of Topekans were flying to Chicago. We have the data now which demonstrates that people already are going to one of those three cities. And if we find an airline that agree with us how much sense it makes to start a route to, say, Phoenix, we'll be filling that plane all the time. So we've learned that. There are some other things that are different. Travel has changed. The airlines have changed. Airlines like Delta and United, the big network providers, they aren't growing all that rapidly at this point. But the point-to-point carriers that fly from Topeka to Orlando, and Orlando back to Topeka, et cetera, they are adding routes. Those are the airlines that are growing. So those are the ones we're going to go after.
Deputy Mayor?
So just looking at things, I know these are going to be routes that are different than Manhattan gives, and I know we all know that Kansas City offers a whole abundance of routes. How is that going to be a hindrance to the situation where we're pretty much smack dab between two already commercial entities, between Manhattan and KCI?
I think that we have a seam to punch through here that plays right to our geographic location. It's true that most of us are used to driving 55 minutes or whatever over to KCI. It's not a great experience, but most of us are used to it. To the extent that you need to go to, Newark or something, you'll still use MCI. But many of us are going to one of those three locations, and being able to drive 14 minutes instead of almost an hour, I think could be a perfect match. The other thing to keep in mind is that for the airlines, operating out of Kansas City has become dramatically more expensive thanks to that new terminal. It's a great terminal, but it's expensive. And so the airline, if we find an airline that comes over here to Topeka, it will actually be much less expensive for them to operate, and we can expect to enjoy literally lower fares as a result. So are we sort of competing with Kansas City? I guess, but I think this is a sweet spot where we've got the people, and if it's easy for them to get on a plane here instead of going over to Kansas City, it's going to work.
And then how much are you looking at the big name brands versus some of the budget airlines, which I know the budget airlines are making a kind of creeping up a little bit, but they also have their issues. And I just want us to look at something like that where like, hey, let's go budget, and then it not work because of all the issues.
Well, obviously, we'll be careful in the team that negotiates whatever we come up with. We'll be careful to make sure that, we have as high a likelihood of getting the service that we need as possible. We are focusing on, so the network airlines are the biggies that go, United, Delta, American. We are going to be focusing on the smaller airlines precisely because they're the ones that are adding routes to those cities. And we will work to make sure we're covered as best we can. There are some intricacies that have to do with the contracts that you enter with the airlines that will be set up in such a way that we'll be kind of monitoring each other all the time to make sure that Topekans are doing their part by buying the seats and the airlines are doing their part by getting us there.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Mayor.
Curtis and Michael, either of you. I know, like you said, things are different. And sometimes we refocus our clients or the people that we're hoping will respond to this opportunity. Just from my experience, having lived here and gone through those efforts, it seems for me that there was a real reliance on just the general public recognizing this advantage to fly out of Topeka. What I would like to hear is, have we also included maybe a much more effort in promoting this to our top employers here in Topeka? Because there are a lot of business people that fly in and out of Topeka for different reasons on a regular basis, and to be able to get their support so that they see that advantage. Even Washburn University is the same thing. They bring people in and out all the time. To be able to focus on their support to supplement just the average person who wants to take a quick weekend vacation.
Right. Well, I think you're right on track, and that's part of what I and the board are working on is, gaining an audience with our corporate community to make sure they appreciate the opportunity here. The narrative is different this time. This is not really about business travel, but it's good for business because adding routes out of Topeka has a number of ramifications. Any given route has an economic impact of, $2.5 million, according to, studies that are done. Another really interesting possibility is that, our friends at Visit Topeka compete for conventions and sporting events all over the place. There are hundreds of such events that they don't even get to call on because they can't check the box that says, yes, you have air service in Topeka. According to Sean Dixon at Visit Topeka, just being able to say, yeah, our airport has an airline at it, will put them at the table for hundreds of new events that could attract a great deal of business to Topeka. And frankly, we'll all be happier employees if we don't have to get up at 4 a.m. to drive over to Kansas City, right? So I do want to be clear that this is not fundamentally this time around about business travel. It's about a route that's going to win and we're going to fill it. But we are very engaged with our corporate partners to make sure they, understand and come along.
And Mr. Mayor, one of the big components of this commercial service is what you hear, the buzz phrase is a revenue guarantee that the airlines command, whether it's a national carrier or less than daily is what we're looking at carrier. You still have to come up with the money where you guarantee they're going to have a certain amount of revenue. So we do have a consultant engaged with us. We have a great report that he prepared. His name's Jax Penny with Valair. I think you'd find it very interesting, council members, if you would like to review that. Mr. Mayor, I know you were there at the presentation, but one of the big aspects of this is, to your point, community buy-in, and that community buy-in is going to be critical for the MTAA from a funding source to get us in a position for that revenue guarantee, because we have the ability to apply for a SCADSky grant, which is a small community air service grant, and one of the big components of that through the Department of Transportation is to be able to show we have community buy-in. So this isn't just a couple of us at the airport saying we need to do this. We've got excitement and support behind it. So we have an advisory committee set up locally, and we're excited to keep pushing forward. So any ideas, support you have, I think this would be a great thing for Topeka. So I think it'll work this time, hopefully. Jack thinks it will, and we do. So,
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. A comment to what you had and then a question. I flew during those periods, and I just want to make sure that with the comments today that it's clear that there was really strong resident and business support for that travel. And those planes were booked full. And that what went wrong, and I'll say it nicely, was that we do need to be careful about the guarantee contract, because what was happening is that that particular airline was getting paid even when they were late or had grounded a flight someplace else overnight and canceled it, and it hurt people that were traveling from Topeka. So certainly checking whoever these airlines are, as somebody else pointed out, and making sure that they're totally reliable in that service that they're promising will make a difference. Again, people were really loyal, residents and businesses, and those planes were booked.
Well taken. Well taken. We've spoken, that's part of what our consultant is briefing us on and coaching us on and making sure that we stay on top of. And I appreciate that, because if there's any sense in which there's been a suggestion that somehow Topekans didn't do their part 10 years ago, let's erase that.
Exactly.
We did.
Exactly.
One thing to note, I alluded to this earlier, but those network airlines, you've all had this experience. You're supposed to be flying and your flight's delayed because your plane is in Milwaukee and there's a problem with the engine, they can't get a crew, whatever. That's kind of how those networks, if they get disrupted, they're disrupted all day long. These point-to-point carriers tend to be much more reliable because they're not as susceptible to that. And we have statistics that back that up. In fact, I think maybe I'll try to arrange to have that presentation put into your hands so you can see those numbers just like we're seeing them.
I think a good thing too, our terminal, our parking lot, obviously is in position to handle the service. We just got a new jet bridge within the last year, so outside of what you call the sterile environment and TSA, I think we're pretty much there. So,
If I can ask my question.
Deputy Mayor, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Has there been any, I know you said you looked at the data, who flies out of the area airports to what locations. Has there been any research on the want of maybe Topekans on where they want to go necessarily that, through a poll or something like that, that you look at, other places, let's say Nashville as an option or Milwaukee, like you brought up Milwaukee or something like that?
I think the thought is that the poll has been taken, and it's all those tickets that have been sold year in and year out, week in and week out. Those three destinations, Topekans have already kind of voted. Now, going forward, I think it would be indispensable exercise to make sure that we stay in line of sight with our, customer base and say, what's next? Because maybe a route to Nashville would be next in line. I don't know, but when you look at the ticket sales, those three cities kind of jump out at you. They're just the whole bar chart is everything else is much lower. So in that sense, we feel like the vote's being cast. That the data is there, already being bought.
All right, thank you.
Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. My question was, back to your overall budget, and I don't know that you need to go back to the slide, but you talked about your revenue that's generated from the airport business and your property tax revenue. You do some pretty major capital improvements. And I'm guessing those were not included in that budget. If they were, say so, but if not, could you give us an idea? Because I think you get some pretty big federal grants. Could you give us an idea of what you're getting there?
Well, let me send Eric's regrets on his behalf because he is the expert on that and would be able to drill as deep as you want on that topic. But what I will tell you is that you're exactly right. Most of the big improvements that we've spoken about here were paid for with federal dollars, whether through the Airport Improvement Program proper or CARES Act monies, et cetera. So we don't really include those in our budget because they're not operating funds. They come to us specifically for a purpose, and they would skew the chart if you threw in the $20 million for a new taxiway because we don't get $20 million every year.
I just want to make sure people knew that you were getting that
Yes.
kind of money in addition to that operating budget, just because you're doing some pretty big stuff.
That's a good observation. And I also, if I may, I think somebody alluded to the idea of getting the public on board here. I kind of want to brag about my boss, Eric, a little bit, and probably the board have had the foresight over the last several years to be squirreling away some money so that we actually have a good size earmark for marketing this thing when it comes back around. We know darn well that that's going to be a hugely important part of it, and he can see that off in the future. So we're ready for that.
Questions? Councilman Banks.
Not a question, thank you, Mr. Mayor Curtis, but just a comment on how much I appreciated the opportunity to come out and sit down with you to get to know you a little bit better and certainly to learn about this initiative. It was very exciting and certainly would be something that I would support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? No? Well, thank you very much, both, for your presentation.
thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 4, our consent agenda. Madam Clerk? Oh, you're right. One more presentation. Parks and Recreation. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Amanda Stanley, our city attorney, will lead us through this item.
Sorry. Sorry, she's grabbing the mouse for me so that we can click through this. So a couple months ago at the governing body meeting, Councilman Dobler asked for just a review of Parks and Rec and how we got where we are, because it's been several years since we did our consolidation. So it's just a good time for a refresher. There it goes. That is backwards in my brain on which one goes down. So a brief history. Consolidation talks really started 30 plus years ago at this point in 1991. They then continued in 1994 and 2003 until ultimately the city and the county decided to do a joint city and county resolution to consolidate our Parks and Rec into the Shawnee County Parks and Rec in 2001. At that time, both governing bodies passed contracts expressing their intent with the idea to consolidate Parks and Rec effective January 1st, 2020 or 2012. So it has now been about 15 years since we consolidated. The intent of the consolidation at the time was to eliminate some duplication in services and the operations and the procedures and functions of the Park and Rec departments in order to more efficiently and effectively serve the needs of your constituents by consolidating. At the time, we had the Topeka Parks and Recreation Department and the Cypress Ridge Golf Course, and those were consolidated with the Shawnee County Parks and Rec to create one large department. At the time, and this continues to the day, the plan excluded our Topeka Zoological Park, the Topeka Zoo, as well as the Forestry Division. The contract at the time was pretty broad and made lots of various provisions that have been utilized as you went through a consolidation process. There's always lots that you have to amend and fix. But at the time, the contract provided for the conveyance of the park's property, as well as the process for transferring the personnel, the creation of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, as well as funding expectations. So all of the park property that was conveyed at the time was subject to a restriction that the property only be used for parks, as well as recreational purposes. And all of the deeds do contain a revisionary clause to require that the property revert back to the city if it is ever no longer used for a park or a recreational purpose, or if it's proposed to be sold or otherwise conveyed by the county. There are lots of pieces of property, so if the county ever did want to dispose of some of that property, you do not have to take the property back. You do have the option of being able to tell them, no, just dispose of that and convey the proceeds into the park. So that is an option. They have not approached us about any particular properties in the last 15 years, as far as I'm aware. There is special language in the Gage Park deed to comply with the deed restrictions of when the land was given to the city by the Gage family. That land has to be very carefully conveyed in order to stay the property of the city, as well as to be used continuously for a zoo, as well as other purposes under that original deed. So in January 1st, 2012, the county became solely responsible for all the maintenance of the properties that we were transferred. The county also was responsible for the administration of our parkland and our parkland development fees pursuant to our Topeka Code. They are still responsible for the administration of our parkland development fees as they're transferred from our planning department over to the county for administration. The city is responsible for continued ordinance enforcement on all city park areas, as well as maintaining the level of law enforcement in effect on January 1st, 2012, when the parks were transferred. Provisions were made for the transfer of city funds for a period of time through 2015 to provide continued operational support as it transitioned from a city-funded enterprise to a county-funded enterprise. After the consolidation, 2 amendments were made to that contract. There have only been the 2 amendments in that time to the contract. The first one was an amendment that happened pretty quickly within 6 months of the agreement going into effect. That actually changed the structure of the board. So it changed it from an advisory board of 7 to 15. 9 of those are appointed by the city council, 6 are appointed by the county commission. It changed the selection process. Initially, those were all selected by the mayor. They are now appointed by each council member, so each council member gets the opportunity to nominate a person for that. They created staggered terms of office, and then it also made a provision that all of these terms end in July of that respective year, that their term is to expire, and they shall not serve beyond the end of their term. So the term does become vacant if, as a council member, you do not nominate a new person to fill in those seats. The second amendment had to do with employees. We had lots of union employees that were working for the Parks and Rec. And so after the transition occurred, there were lots of union negotiations that were required to ensure an orderly transition. So the second contract amendment dealt strictly with those AFT employees that were transferred to ensure that transition occurred. Since then, that is the current state of our Parks and Rec recreational consolidation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, City Attorney? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been on the council through this whole time, and so your bullet on your fifth slide about the administration of acquisition of parkland or parkland development fees, could you talk about that a little bit and whether they've actually created any new parks?
I do not know about the creation of new parks, but I did anticipate this question, so I asked our planning division to give me the quick summary of how this works in practice. And so Dan Warner can talk about this in more detail at some point if you would like to, but our parkland development fee is collected with new residential building permits. The fee varies depending on building type and area. For instance, those subdivisions that have dedicated parkland have a very specific fee. The fee is different depending on the area of town. So if the subdivisions that don't have a dedication versus ones that do, it is collected during the building permit phase and it is transferred. I do know they've built new parks. What I don't know is how this has all been used, and we can ask the county for more details on the administration of it.
Thank you.
Further questions? Make sure Councilman Dover doesn't have his hand raised. Okay, well, thank you, Amanda. We'll move on now to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
4A are the minutes of the regular meeting of March 4th, and there are no applications.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Deputy Mayor. Will you call the roll, please?
Dobler? Duncan?
Yes.
Hofer?
Yes.
Mayor Padilla?
Yes.
Hiller?
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Banks?
Yes.
Kell?
Yes.
And Miller.
Yes.
Perfect timing. We have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to action items. Madam Clerk?
A is an ordinance introduced by the city manager, Dr. Robert M. Perez, exempting certain requirements in KSA 41710 concerning distances of retail liquor stores in relation to schools, colleges, or churches.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. I'll ask Amanda Stanley, our city attorney, to lead us through this item.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. You heard about this ordinance last week. As the clerk read, there is state law, KSA 41-710, that prohibits a retail liquor store from being within 200 feet of any public, parochial, school, college, or church. I was asked how that is measured. That goes back to an Attorney General opinion. There's not a court case on that, but the Attorney General opinion measures it from the property line of the affected entity to the doors of the liquor store, basically. So it is not measured from building to building. It's measured from the property line of the college, not to the building line of the liquor store, but to the door of the liquor store. State law does allow this restriction to be waived by action of the governing body. The owner of the liquor store and his attorney are in the audience if you have additional questions. Mr. Butler and his attorney, Ron Schneider.
There is, I don't think anyone signed up for this at this point. Have some discussion on this particular action item. Council members? Councilwoman Valdivia Aquila and then Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just going over what I went over last week. I understand that we're just looking, a very few number of feet. And I stated last week, and I'll state it again. I think that when we're looking at trying to change up the narrative a little bit within the city council, with looking at the social determinants of health, looking at public health, when we craft policy, and we are in the baby stages of that through the Public Health and Safety Committee. In helping us along is the Shawnee County Health Department. But I think that understanding that some of the decisions that we make, especially in underserved communities, can have long-ranging impact. I'm not against alcohol. I'm not against any of that. I was really surprised at the number of emails that we received in. I mean, really surprised. And I was glad. And I will say that the majority of them, I think all of them, I think, came from women. And I'm saying that just because I think that there is something to be said with these deep concerns that often fall in women's laps to try to move forward agendas that are really thinking about what the future is of the children that live there, of the youth that live there, of all community members that not just live there, but within our city. And there's just no way that I can support this. So I just wanted to leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in District 3. I'm always open to new businesses. So I went to New Dawn Wellness Recovery. I didn't speak with Diane. I spoke with Liz, who I deal with some of my Vallejo people, who in turn told me that they would not support this. And then I went to a couple of my constituents over there who said they would not support this. I then went to my NIA president, Ann Marshall of Chesney NIA, who's been the NIA president for a long time. And she got back with me and said that the NIA would not support this. And so for those reasons, I will not be able to support this. I did let all three of the entities and the people that I spoke with said they are only short, it was my understanding, 20 feet, right? 20 feet, I thought that's what it was. And so they could go on the other side of them if they really wanted to do this. And that they have had other liquor stores on the other side of them, and so they did understand that. I did want to clarify, City Attorney, if you could help me out here. I did ask you a question because we got an email that said if we do not follow the law, we get arrested. I've not known any laws bending. We're not bending anything. And can you explain that part of it? Because I want to let them know why we are at the table doing this.
Sure. State law is very specific. It does restrict it, and you cannot have it within 200 feet unless it is approved by ordinance of the governing body. So if the governing body chose to pass an ordinance, that would be a legal waiver under state statute that was contemplated by the legislature.
Thank you, City Attorney, because I don't believe anybody on this council is trying to bend anything. For those reasons, I will not be able to support this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Duncan, then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to explain how I will vote this evening. I think one of the reasons people understandably get frustrated with government is when we change the rules on them. Rules we kind of didn't create formally, sort of the unspoken rules that we try to put in place. And I think that's why I've struggled with this. To the point, it's 20 feet or less. If that wasn't the issue, this wouldn't even have come before us. And this man who's already invested money and put some work into this project at this point wouldn't be in this situation. I had never thought, admittedly, last week when it was mentioned to us during public comment about us having a density plan. I think that's a fair suggestion. I think it's probably a good one. I think if anyone wants to run with that, I'd certainly be supportive. But we don't have that right now. And so when you're coming to the city of Topeka to open one of these businesses, you don't have a rule that we've put in place officially that says, can I or can I not put it in this area of town or on this corner, because we haven't established that rule for them to follow yet. Once we do that, I think it's absolutely fair to then say, no, you cannot put it here. We have an actual plan that we've put forward that you must follow. And I think the last thing is, on February 4th, this governing body approved the CMB license for the Casey store on that corner. It was not discussed. There was no objections. It passed unanimously. And same issue, they're going to be selling alcohol right there. And it didn't come up. And I just personally struggle a little with telling the corporate chain store, sure, I don't mind if you sell it here, but the local guy a little differently. So those are the reasons I'll be supporting this today, Mayor. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Last week I brought up the thing of coffee, and then it brought up after that the health risks of alcohol. There are also health risks to coffee. High blood pressure is a major factor, and we don't regulate that. We don't sit there and tell people, well, we're only going to have so many coffee shops in an area because of people's health. I understand that this is an adult choice to make, and like the councilman said, we're allowing cases across the street to sell alcohol, and that's where it's kind of getting my aspect of the 20 feet. If this was 20 feet to the east, we're not even having this discussion. People bring up Washburn. Washburn allows alcohol on campus when you fill out a permit. So there's, when we're trying to put stuff out there, we got to look at both sides. Yes, it may allow more access for students, but if the students are 21, what's the harm in that? Especially if when Washburn itself does allow for permitting for special events. We keep on talking about our empty buildings. We have empty buildings all over town. We have someone that's willing to come in and take over an empty building, redevelop it, start generating tax money, and like I said, if it's 20 feet the other direction, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. It's just, I think my biggest hang-up is cases across the street will be selling alcoholic beverages, and to me, that's closer to Robinson. Excuse me, last week I said Landon Middle School. I meant Robinson. The councilman here corrected me after the meeting. That's closer to Robinson, and kids actually have access to Casey's, where at the liquor store, those students will not have access to that. So I'm definitely looking at multiple factors here, and I believe I'll support this.
Councilwoman Hiller?
I made comments last week, so I won't go through them all again, but I do appreciate the city attorney's checking. My understanding, and she said that tonight, was that it's even the attorney general's opinion is that this has not been challenged, and also apparently it gives us the right to do the waiver. So the issue of whether the straight line goes to the property line at the curb or whether it goes to the first building that has people in it, 20 feet and we're done. It's about 600 or 1,000 feet to get to a building that has people in it, even giving it a buffer around the edge of the building. So, this is a tough one, I know, because we're balancing. We have a lot of recovery programs. Some of them want people way far away from any temptation. That's pretty impossible to do. Others intentionally say this is where you're going to live. You need to keep walking right by and go get a Pepsi or whatever that's just part of the recovery process that people are going through. Also, we have made it a high priority to be supporting small business development, as well as the neighborhood-based strip, revitalizing the zones. And if you think about it, all over town, when you have your neighborhood-based cluster of retail, that's important for a neighborhood to be a go-to neighborhood to live in and thrive, there's typically a liquor store included. So I will continue to support this.
Councilman Miller, then Councilwoman Valdivia.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate all of my fellow council members' thoughts. Well, the question is, do we want to waive a waiver for 20 feet? The simple answer for me is no. But the more broad concept is that we are trying to, I'll say it like this. I also do not want to hinder local business and local entrepreneurs from doing what they want to do. But if the question is if we are willing to waive for a liquor store, my answer is no. I'm not going to get into the minutia of what I think you should do with your business, because I want you to succeed at your business, whoever it is, whatever local business wants to do. but that local business also needs to think of the community that they will be putting their business in and the effects of the items that they have. Now, when we're talking about coffee, or I believe it was T-shirts, which you brought up last week, again, respect that. But those aren't huge issues to health determinants and how households are run and how behaviors in those households are affected by coffee and T-shirt, respectfully. So I want to make sure that we answer the question that we're being asked, but also keeping the bigger concept of the safety of our community at hand. Thank you.
Councilwoman Bediviaco.
Thank you, Mayor. Tell me what you just said about the act of space. What is it that you said? I lost the word.
Density.
Density. So I would definitely be interested in working on something, just so you know, City Attorney, for density. I look at what we have in Oakland, and in less than a mile distance, we have a liquor store, we have a pizza place that sells 3.2 beer, and then we have 2 bars, and in such a tight area. And I can tell you, and I'm not voting this on this area of Topeka that you're voting on right now, but I cannot tell you how problematic it has been. I cannot tell you the number of the crimes, and again, I'm talking about Oakland. The burglaries, the robberies with the liquor store, the shootings, all of this in such a tight density of space. And what was the ramification for it? Too much alcohol, and too much in a very small, compact part of Oakland. I think, we can say that this wouldn't be coming before us if it wouldn't be for this 20 feet. The bottom line is, to me, that's a moot point, because it is before us. And this is one of those calls. It's not, it's just leading that path where I believe that eventually we need to go. And I was very surprised at what Councilwoman Ortiz said with all the folks that she talked to, people that worked in that district, people that live in that district, so you could probably refer to them as the people. And she has a lot of people that don't want it. And so I don't believe that new businesses should be discouraged. But I do think that it is something that we need to start focusing on as a council. I'm willing to take that up. And again, I just appreciate all the dialogue, because I know that it has been a difficult decision. Thank you, Mayor.
Further comment? If I may offer, listening to the council, it seems like, in a way, this is a toss-up, in that, on the one hand, we support small businesses and the opportunity for people to do business where they have taken the time to look at the properties, look at the viability of the business, look at how it will affect that area. And for me right now, I'm not inclined to vote against this opportunity, because if we want to develop a density plan, if we want to make sure for future efforts, we have something in place rather than to deny on something that we haven't yet really focused on and put a plan in place, I think is putting the cart before the horse. I worked at the ABC before I came here to the council, and I know that we struggled with this on a lot of occasions in a lot of cities. Councilman Duncan was probably aware of many of them because of his work in that area. But I don't like saying no when there isn't an overwhelming legal stand to take other than 20 feet. So for me, I'll be voting for this. And I appreciate the concern and conversations. I would encourage if this does pass, that we make ourselves familiar with this operation as much as possible, that we encourage as much dialogue between all the entities in that area, not just the liquor store, but all of those who serve that public there, to make sure that we're keeping it a safe place for people to do business and in the future make the choices they want to make without us after the fact saying, well, we said no because we should have had a plan. No, we don't have one. So for me, that's not a reason to say no. So those are my comments. Is there a motion to consider? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. Deputy Mayor second it. If you'll call the roll, please.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Heller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
No.
Ortiz,
No.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
and Miller.
No.
Okay, we have 7 yes, the motion carries.
Thank you for your votes and your discussion. Move on to action item 5B. Madam Clerk.
B is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project numbers 141037 Phase 2 for traffic signal replacement at Southwest 21st Street and Randolph Avenue.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the governing body. Steve Braun, Director of Public Works, will actually lead us through items B, C, D, and E. Steve.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Governing Board. This is part of our 2025 traffic signal replacement program. The signal that's being replaced is 33 years old, and we're looking for your support to replace that this year.
Okay, any questions for Steve? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Infrastructure Committee has been working very, very hard on moving things through, so I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Banks. To call the roll, please.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Heller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Move to action item C. Madam Clerk.
C is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project numbers 841097 Phase 6 and 501105 Phase 16 for street and utility improvements for Northwest Menninger Road from Northwest Green Hills Road to Northwest Rochester Road.
City Manager. Steve.
Yes, sir. This is a project to do a mill and overlay with some patching and also the replacement of a reinforced concrete box culvert with some water main replacement. We had a public open house last evening. It was well received and it went very well, I thought, and we're looking for your support to proceed with this project.
Okay. Is there a motion? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Mr. Mayor, the Public Infrastructure Committee has been working very hard, and here's another great project. I motion to approve.
Okay. Councilwoman Valdivia Aquila.
Second.
Second. Okay, if you call the roll, please.
Hofer,
I like that.
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Heller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Since you're working hard, yes.
We have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. When you're ready, Madam Clerk. Item D.
D is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project numbers 841097, Phase 16, and 501105, Phase 9, for street and utility improvements for Southwest Roosevelt Street from 8th Avenue to 6th Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, this is another part of our projects for our CIP for this year. This includes a mill and overlay with some full depth patching, curb and gutter replacements, and also some stormwater repairs. We're hoping to do this project with your approval this summer.
Okay, thank you. Hardworking Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Infrastructure Committee has been working very hard, not only in the north, but now we're in central. We do not discriminate. We are very happy, and with your approval, I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve, second by Deputy Mayor. If you call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Hofer.
Yes.
Okay. We have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay. Action item E, Madam Clerk.
E is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Sylvia Ortiz, David Banks, and Neil Dobler, recommending approval of project number 841097, Phase 11, for street improvement on Southeast Greenfield Court.
City Manager, oh, Steve.
Yes, sir. This is actually part of our payment management program. I did receive some questions on this project, why it was selected. There are some drainage issues in this cul-de-sac. And to alleviate this, we're going to replace the curb and gutter to get the water to flow to the structures where it's intended to, with the associated paving to make this cul-de-sac drain as it should. We're looking for your support to do this project this summer.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are now in Southeast. The public infrastructure has worked real hard to get to Southeast, and this is the last thing. So we'd like your support. I'd make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Banks. If you call the roll, please.
Keller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yep.
Banks,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
and Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, the motion carries.
Okay, I want to thank the committee and the chair, Councilwoman Ortiz.
David Banks is the chair.
Oh, David's the chair, that's right. You're the one been cracking the whip.
I pass
Yeah.
the baton to him. But, yeah, again, we said this last time around, you know, the public sometimes asks, you know, where are those dollars being spent? They're being spent all over the city and doing some great improvements all over this town. Bear with us on the inconvenience that some of this construction, reconstruction causes, but it's really good to see these projects moving so quickly toward the public, and that committee really is doing an excellent job. So we'll move on now to non-action items. Madam Clerk.
A is a discussion of an application. A is a discussion of an application submitted by LB Lots LLC to establish a reinvestment housing incentive district and requesting that the Secretary of Commerce review the resolution, advise the governing body.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. Braxton Copley, our Deputy City Manager, will lead us through this item.
And we'll start with Director Friedman, who unfortunately is...
Just a moment. Braxton, just a moment.
We have public comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Braxton. We do have someone signed up for this particular item. I'll allow them to go first if you don't mind. Okay, Danielle Twemlow. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity. I mean, I feel like I can't imagine having to go through all of this and manage what all of this means, and feel like I've gotten a whole separate degree trying to make sense of it myself, which obviously appears we're going to be losing quite a bit of money over this time frame. upwards of 6 million if this is the same template that we use on the remaining lots, which has been stated before. But I do want to talk about all these empty buildings, as has been brought up earlier, as this developer, under one of the 14 pages of LLCs listed, and just one of those LLCs, the amount of empty buildings downtown that have been for more than a decade, have very minimal. One of them has a large property tax rate that they do pay, one a pretty reasonable, but all the others that have laid vacant for almost a decade or more are not appreciating in value, and a couple of those entire buildings pay less property tax than I do on my home. So these empty buildings, on just some of those, have been laying vacant and not accruing any dollars for us for quite some time. But what I also see specifically on this RHID that I want to address is something that we've been bringing up quite often about utilizing that RHID and these specials in ways that make sense for our community. And it states that 420 housing units are needed according to our housing study. Really a realistic goal in the housing study says about 125 units total per year for our community. Specifically, this district within the housing study is considered a growing district that, I quote, says the strongest market-based investment with no public intervention required to stimulate a housing investment. So according to our housing study, this was deemed a place that really doesn't meet our but-for analysis for any of those assessments. So just want to make sure we understand that. That we'd be making that exception. Additionally, the actual executive summary states that the substantial demand for affordable housing in Topeka, or units affordable to those earning at or below 60% of AMI, which is approximately 42% of our existing renter households, qualify for that affordable housing. And actually, if we look at the AMI standards based on our housing market study, that there are a total of 520 units needed for sale, not just renting, but for sale, of under an AMI of 120%, which is about $44,000. So as we've learned, that's at least half of our community makes under $50,000. So the actual higher need of our community is this, the need of AMI at the 120% mark, not the AMI of 150%, which is what we continue over and over again to be giving these specials and these RHIDs for. So we're actually doing it backwards. So I think that we've probably met our quota for giving the price point to developers who are building houses at this level based on any of our market analysis, and we have far beyond furbishly and aggressively looking at ways that we can actually build or refurbish housing that is for the majority of our population. So I want us to keep that in mind as we keep looking to give more tax breaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Copeland.
Director Friedman has prepared a PowerPoint presentation. We will have her start off with going through that presentation. She unfortunately is under the weather and is participating remotely.
All right, thanks, Braxton. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll run through this quickly here. So this is the RHID district request for LB Lots LLC, the Lawrence Bay Development. All right, so as a quick overview, the City of Topeka received an application requesting the creation of an RHID district for the 15 lots that are located in Lawrence Bay. And tonight, staff seeking approval for just going through the conversation tonight, and they'll be seeking approval on the March 18th meeting to send this district to the Kansas Department of Commerce for their approval of the district creation. All right, so this map helps represent the lots within Lawrence Bay that make up this initial district of the 15 lots. So you can tell that the Lawrence Bay entrance is located at Southwest 47th and Wanamaker Road. So like I said, this map helps kind of depict which lots are included in this first district to be created. And the thought is that the proposal is to build and sell 15 single-family homes in the proposed district over the next 4 years. All right, so as I said, the application for the RHID district was received on February 13th by the applicant LB Lots. Having conversation tonight, and then we'll be seeking action on the March 18th meeting to send this for the Department of Commerce for approval of district creation. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Anna? Councilwoman Valdivia.
I just need clarification. I think I've received the answer already some meetings ago, but I just need to clarify that the RHID specifies, as it stands right now, and this came down from the state, that anybody applying for this should not be owing in any back taxes. Is that correct?
That is not a requirement from the state. That is in our local RHID policy.
Okay, the local, my apologies, but in the local RHID policy, they're not supposed to owe any back taxes.
Correct.
So there's going to be most likely the move to make an accommodation for him, correct?
In the September resolution that the governing body passed, you made a motion to allow them to apply, but ultimately the governing body would have to vote to waive that as part of an approval.
Right, well, that's mincing.
Yes.
So that's mincing, because we know it's going to come here for the votes, yeah. And then I think I remember in that meeting as well, the concern that I had expressed that one of the most blatant and egregious individuals that owes probably the most back taxes that anybody in Topeka does, even with combined LLCs, which is Jim Klossman, that if that is granted under under his LLCs, if that is granted, and then if other individuals, other developers come and want that same kind of favor, that same kind of vote to allow, if they owe a whole ton load of millions and millions of dollars of back taxes and back due specials and all of that, would that not open us up to being sued if we said no and closed the door back on this chapter and just allow this for Klossman? And I think you told me, City Attorney, that we can get sued anytime for anything.
The governing body would need to be able to provide a rational basis why they gave it to one and not the other in order to avoid, well, you wouldn't avoid litigation, but in order to prevail, you would have to show why there was a rational reason why you gave it to one and not the other.
And so I think that just a few more comments. I mean, this whole thing is just beyond, I understand what people are trying to do, but the whole thing that we can let somebody go, we're probably headed into a recession. We have the serious need for affordable housing. We have half of our population making less or $50,000 a year or less. I mean, we have all kinds of things happening here, and yet we're going to just keep working with this guy. We see it all over social media that the taxpayer is really offended by all of this. They're extraordinarily offended by it. And in my district, it's the whole thing about where is that kind of entitlement for them if they don't want to pay on their taxes. And we know that that entitlement is not there because they don't have status, whatever status means in Topeka. And so I don't even think, I was looking through emails today, trying to get the information that I got from the county, the information I've gotten from the city, and trying to add it all up to see exactly how much this guy owes with Lawrence Bay and back taxes and back due specials, and how much has been forgiven versus not forgiven, and then how much of a benefit he's going to be getting if he gets the CID and if he gets the RHID. And I think that anyone, not just the 62-year-old woman, would understand that is some very hard information to consistently come by that's put right in front of you. But maybe I'll have to take a walk down that road to see if I can get something on one piece of paper so that I can share with the residents and those I represent in District 2. Thank you.
Further discussion? Deputy Mayor?
Well, people keep on bringing up the specials. Majority of us were not on council when the specials were given on this. I don't think we, in the 4 years I've been here, have done any specials. The thing is, I wasn't for this at the beginning, but this is a way we can recoup these specials by working with this gentleman, because if we didn't work with him and it went to auction, those specials disappear. That's state law, we have no say in that. Those specials go away. And so we would have lost all that money to a sale to someone that may have just let it sit there again even longer without developing it. So it was our way of working with the developer to try to recoup as much of that back specials, back taxes as we can, and limiting it to these 15 properties. Because the developer wanted it on all the properties. We wanted to limit it, have them show us that they're willing to do what needs to be done, and get these back on the tax rolls, so then they're generating tax dollars, getting the specials paid back, because part of what I brought up in these meetings is that we don't allow this developer just to fly off with all that extra money that they're making, but make sure that all the back specials, all the back taxes are paid up on this before we allow them to go on. Again, this is state law. If that would have gone to auction, specials gone. That, what I think is $6 million, it would have just disappeared off and gone away, because that's state law. We'd have no way to recoup that specials money. So this is a way for us to try to recoup as much of that $6 million as possible. And also on the other properties that this person owns, by working with them rather than just letting this money disappear. I don't like it, but it's better than getting nothing. And by letting it go to auction like we would have done, it would have been nothing. So I'd rather get $6 million and work with the guy than have $6 million just disappear. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilwoman Hiller.
Just a quick clarification. In terms of that tax payment eligibility, this gentleman is current on all of his other taxes, is that correct?
Braxton is probably best to answer.
So if I can just add some context and maybe just lay out some of the basic facts and numbers. As one of the conditions on the resolution was that the developer had to pay the past due taxes to be able to get these properties out of the auction. And the amount of those past due taxes for these 16 lots is a total of $86,000, and that has been paid. The amount of, and there are 16 lots, but I will point out that one of those is a sliver lot, and the developer plans to combine it with the lot right next to it, to combine the two of those to make it a larger lot. So the amount of past due specials for those lots is $423,000. The amount of payment that we negotiated with the developer is based on $2.25 a square foot, and that comes to $525,000. So that exceeds the amount of the past due specials. Now, just to make this deal even more complicated to understand, we need to also address the future specials. The future specials on these 16 parcels come to a total of $432,000. And as part of the negotiations, we had talked about taking those future specials and using a CID, Community Investment District, to put those future specials in that, to extend those out. Currently, they would be on the books for about 10 more years. There's going to be extended for another 10, for a total of 20. Our expectation was that was going to markedly lower those future specials, which currently are in about $300 a lot, which is considerably higher than similarly situated properties. As we did the amortization schedule for the CID, we found that those specials were only going to be reduced down to about $227 per lot. The developer indicated that that was too much of a potential burden on future homeowners. And so what we negotiated and what you have in the developer agreement that was handed out to you was an amendment to basically allow for the excess amount of the past due specials, that $102,000, to be used to reduce the principal of the future specials. And that really gets us down to about $185 per lot per month, which is much more in line with what the market is, so that you don't have these properties burdened with significantly higher amount of specials. And that is basically the taxes, past due specials, path forward for the future specials using the CID. We know that the developer plans to use I'm sorry, it's not rural anymore, it's residential housing improvement district to assist with this. So we've got CID, RHID, development agreement. These are all parts of the moving pieces. Tonight is the discussion. Next week would be the vote on moving forward with the RHID, and we would set the public hearing for the CID, and then ultimately come back at some point with the development agreement.
That would be next week.
The development agreement approval would be the 18th as well. So that's a very quick overview of the material terms of where we are, and I understand the frustration of Councilmember Valdivia Alcala. There are a lot of numbers. The county's website is not what I would consider user-friendly to be able to tease that information out of, so I just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of what the numbers were for these 16 lots. And of course, the city purchased 3 lots at auction, and we plan to include those in the CID as well to give us the ability to spread the specials out on the city's 3 lots. So hopefully that helps Councilmember Hiller to answer the questions that you have.
Thank you.
Councilman Duncan?
There's 2 questions. Has this been agreed to by the developer at this point, officially as of tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
The developer agreed to, we sent the amended development agreement over, and the developer's attorney, I believe, is participating via Zoom and can speak for herself.
All right. Just wanted a yes or no. Thank you. And I don't have a second question.
Deputy Mayor?
I know we're looking at a time frame to, make sure things were done in a timely manner. Without going through 20 pages here, was there a time frame that was actually agreed upon for these 15 lots?
So there are multiple timeframes. One is the whole developer agreement is conditioned upon the approval of the RHID, the approval of the CID. There's a provision relative to the doing this in 4 tranches of approximately 4 homes a year, only getting started after final approval of everything, which would be CID, RHID, development agreement. And then there's also the understanding that upon approval of the development agreement, the developer would go ahead and escrow those past due specials, the $500 and $25,000, put that into escrow, and then release that from escrow upon the execution of the development agreement after all of the other conditions were met, including CID and RHID.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala?
Okay, about the escrow, I don't know a lot about escrow, but who controls it? The escrow?
It would be a third-party escrow agent that both the city and the developer would agree to. So it's a third party that's fiduciarily obligated to hold those funds separate in an account so they can't be touched.
And could he back out of it?
No,
The deal?
once they're in escrow, only the terms of the escrow can release it. So if the deal fell apart because the CID wasn't approved or the RHID, then that would allow release of it. But if everything was gone through, then no, it automatically transfers to the city.
Thank you.
Councilman Banks?
Forgive my lack of knowledge about this process, but if we have regulations about a person owing taxes, no matter who it is, if they're owing taxes and there are regulations about them not being able to be involved in the process. I don't see how we can, I've gone back and forth in my mind and my thoughts about, getting what we can get and accepting the fact that we've made a mistake and we're trying to go on to get past it. In my mind, how are we going to justify giving the Lauren Bay project special privileges, and then when someone else comes along and we say, oh, we can't do that? How are we going to live with that? The fact is, we're probably going to end up in litigation. And, just moving this back and forth is, to me, it's becoming way too difficult to process. If I had to vote tonight, I'd have to maybe go home and sleep on it, come back an hour later. This is beyond me, and forgive my lack of knowledge about the process, but I just don't see how we can do that, especially if we have regulations in place, whether it's by the state or the city, whoever. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think I know the answer to this, but just to make sure, City Attorney or Braxton, if this was to be approved, we're not, the city itself, granting an RHID. We're helping them with the application for an RHID? I just want to be clear.
No, the city would be ultimately the ones granting the RHID. First,
Okay.
the first step's here, it goes to Commerce, who says, yes, you can do it. It comes back to the governing body, and you are the ones that ultimately make the policy choice to grant it or not.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you. Further questions? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Hope I'm not creating quicksand, but I wanted to double check. Two pieces. One, this gentleman who owns the property right now was not the original developer of the property, correct?
Correct. The original developer of the property was Gene Yanni as part of that entire Lawrence Bay development, and there were a number of people that financially backed him, but ultimately that failed, and then various banks were closed on real estate. Other people were able to purchase real estate at a low price, but that's how we got here with very high specials on those funds.
Right, because we contributed to putting in the streets, which we don't always do, and the utilities. And so we had that. I just wanted, I struggled with this at first, but knowing that this individual that owns the property now was not the original developer, stepped in and picked up those properties when things crashed, is just worth it to me in the storytelling. Second question is, once we do this, get these 15 houses built, what's our thought about what happens next with those other properties and whether we need to be involved at that point?
So the very clear direction that has been given to us by the governing body is to laser focus on these 16 lots. We all recognize that if we can get a deal closed on these 16 lots, that will establish precedent that this developer and other developers will likely come to us and say, this is the deal you gave to that developer. We would like the same opportunity.
So, now this is me being hopeful about this. Again, we've talked about this at the council level for about 4 years now. So we had another developer giving us some advice at first. Is it possible that once these houses are done, which establishes the momentum and the pricing and so on, that the rest of the development could happen at market?
I don't know if that's speculation. Yeah.
Well, I just hope that's not off the table as an option.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So what, to the question, I think that would be speculation, but as I understand, this would actually give us a path forward on something that's been sitting idle for a moment. Again, particularly for these lots, I just want to reiterate that the past due taxes have been paid already. There's a plan to pay the past due specials. There's a plan to address the future specials, which again, this could serve as a playbook for the rest of it moving forward. But I mean, just to say that at market, I can't, that we'd be guessing at this point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia.
Thank you, Mayor. How many lots will still be after these 16 that he takes over and the other 2 or 3 that the city bought? How many lots will still be out there?
Rhiannon, do you know that figure off the top of your head? I think it's approximately 100.
100. So 105. Was I correct? At one point, wasn't part of the negotiations, he was trying to get hold of everything? Klossman, LLC, Lawrence Bay, all the properties to develop it? Am I wrong on that as part of the negotiations?
Again, it goes back to the governing body has made it crystal clear to us that they want us to laser focus on these 16 parcels that were subject to the resolution in the text.
But you're not answering my question.
There's other lots out there besides the ones that Mr. Klossman owns. So yeah, so there's more. So what I think what you're referring to is where they wanted us to negotiate on all of his lots.
All of his lots?
Right. But
was that part of what they wanted in the negotiations?
At the beginning, that's what we first started talking about. But to your question, there's still other lots out there that are not owned by Mr. Klossman, but by other.
Okay, but set those aside. I'm talking about Klossman's lots. I'm talking about his. Did he, at one time, when this negotiation process started, the first round of negotiation or the second round of negotiation, did he want to have all of his lots back to develop them, be the developer?
The initial discussion was yes. However, we referred back to the resolution that stated that we needed to focus solely on these 16 lots.
Okay, it's so easy to get to a yes. And so is there anything that you have talked with, anybody has talked with Klossman about that there could be another one of these deals coming down the pike where he'll be forgiven, he'll pay his little bit of back taxes and in other words, some kind of deal made down the road where he's going to get by again because he is bound and determined that he wants to develop these other properties of his. Is there any indication that we're going to be having multiple rounds of this?
We are.
Multiple rounds of what is being done right now?
We are working on the resolution that was adopted by the governing body to focus just on these 16. Obviously, as I just mentioned, this does give us kind of a groundwork, if you will, if we want to follow this path again, to how we can get there. But as of right now, we're just focusing on these 16.
So I would say for the people that are watching and the people that talk to other people about this to understand that this could happen again. So that's just so everybody's on the same page. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
As far as I understand it, we're not forgiving anything. We're getting everything that's owed to us, correct?
As part of the tax foreclosure, there was a waiver of penalties and interest, but again, I've already gone over the past due specials and future specials and past due real estate tax. But there was penalties and interest that were waived by the county as part of that, as part of getting those, pulling those out of the tax foreclosure sale.
And so, like I said before, if this were gone to auction, those specials would have been gone. And in the future, if all those other properties, specials would have gone to auction, all those specials are gone. This is a way for us to recoup those specials and try to get things. And the key word I think Braxton used earlier was the precedence. The precedence this sets is getting the money that's owed to us and getting properties back on the tax rolls. If we just let these go to auction, then they just go out there, we lose all those back special money, and now we're sitting there with a possible another developer that doesn't want to develop it, that sits on it again. Like I said, I was not in favor of this at all to begin with, but if it gets us, 90, 95, 100% of our money back that's owed to us, it's better than nothing. And that's the problem right now, that to me, this is not forgiving Klossman for anything. This is working with a developer to try to get things, and like I said, the precedent that we're setting, that we can work with other developers on, that as the city attorney said, we can kind of be sued for anything, but my argument is we're getting the money that's owed to us and trying to work forward with these properties. Because the longer they sit there undeveloped and all that, we're just going to run into issues longer down the road that we're going to constantly have to send these to auction. We're going to have to figure out what's going on, just like we did the first time around 6 months ago when these went to auction. It's not great, but it gets us something. And I think the $6 million I think I had was for all the specials, for all the properties. That's the number I was thinking of. And so if we look at it, 115 properties, 120 properties, $6 million is going to make a big dent if we can get that money back. What if it goes to auction, that goes away. And then it gets, like I said, gets housing market. And I know people brought up RHID, supposed to be LMI. There's nothing that I looked over on the commerce that says it has to be LMI neighborhoods. I know we put, I think, 3 into the land bank, Councilman Duncan? Those 3 are in the land bank, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So we can use that now to generate more money from those sales to go and grab our LMA properties and have a nice bank to work off of on our LMI properties. It's just it says something that has an idea of something doesn't mean, we ran into this years ago with all these businesses going out and buy Hummers when they, it was in the law that they could do it. So I'm not agreeing with it, but it's one of those things of, this is the better of the 2 options we have, I think, right now. The other option is we lose a bunch of money and we have empty lots. This, we're at least getting our money back and we're developing the properties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Okay. Well, I think, thank you, Braxton, for trying to make it clear in a complicated situation during the negotiations. I appreciate that. City Manager, any further comments before we move on? Okay, thank you for the discussion. Okay, we will move on now to public comment. And I have one individual signed up for public comment, Kenneth Otten. Kenneth Otten. Kenneth Otten. Okay. There's no one else signed up? Okay. We'll move on now to announcements. Madam Clerk.
Okay, March 18th agenda, we have 1 appointment, 2 presentations, the THA annual report and the 2024 financial summary. We have 3 expenditure ordinances on the consent agenda with the minutes from the regular meeting of tonight. Action items, we have the resolution naming and dedicating the Jack Alexander Water Treatment Plant. Item B is an ordinance for the John January 3rd Topeka renovation. C, we have an ordinance, AMD Partners LLC. D, we have an ordinance for Doltmeyer Charles F. Living Trust. And then we have a resolution. E is the resolution for 2025 Topeka Dreams Program funding. We have F, an ordinance updating Affordable Housing Trust Fund. G is a development agreement for the Lawrence Bay Development subdivisions. H, we have the Lawrence Bay LB Lots Reinvestment Housing Incentive District. I, we have a resolution setting the public hearing date for the CID for Lawrence Bay. J, we have the resolution setting the public hearing date for the Union at Tower District RHID. And then we have 1 discussion item, and that is all.
Thank you. Sounds like a lot.
Yes.
City Manager.
Nothing for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Ask the council members, Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Dr. Mem. Councilwoman Ortiz, hardworking Councilwoman Ortiz.
Mr. Mayor, been so hardworking, I'm tired. I have nothing.
Thank you. Councilman Banks.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor.
I guess I'll break the sequence here. First of all, when I apologize the way I look, it's hot as heck in here and I had to take the jacket off. We lost a animal at the zoo that was loved by our community. Cassie was 17. We've had some great comments in social media about Cassie and how much she was loved by the community. We always get negative stuff on there, but she lived at 17 years old. In the wild, it's 8 to 10 years. In captivity, it's 15 to 10 years. So she lived a really good life. And the great thing about zoos is they can take animals that are injured, they can't live in the wild, and bring them in, especially native to Kansas or native to the Midwest, and bring them in. We just got a golden eagle that has a broken wing that will be now at the zoo here pretty soon. So, but we also learn a lot from these animals to help out in the wild. So it's sad that we lost her, but I know we learned a lot, and then the community learned a lot about her. Saturday, Washburn men's basketball will be playing at Lee Arena. They're going to be hosting their regional. They play at 5:30, and if they win, they'll turn around and play on Sunday, hosting again at Lee Arena. And then finally, we discussed construction projects tonight. I know it's a headache for people. It's one of those things you look at social media and I'm sorry, Mr. Banks here got me all distracted. You look at social media on that and people complain, and then you have people sitting there saying, well, you complain when they're doing projects, you complain when they're not doing projects. We're trying our best. Our men and women that work for the city, and then also our contractors, trying to do their best to get these streets back up and running and having great streets to drive on. This is a long-term problem that's been out there that we're slowly kicking it, just like our water main and sewer lines. And it's not going to happen overnight, but please be patient. Please be careful around construction workers, especially pretty soon I think we're being running a night crew for repairs and patching, so make sure you're aware of those when they're out there. And enjoy the rest of the week.
Councilman Miller.
Wow. Mr. Mayor, I'll let that slide. I really didn't have much to say. Mr. Kale, don't let nobody else's thought of how you should be dressed affect your apologies. Be fresh in whatever you're wearing, yeah? Okay, good. Second, I wanted to recognize our hardworking basketball teams in this area. For our girls' side, we have these 4 teams punching their ticket to state tournament starting tomorrow. Silver Lake, Hayden, Seaman, and Washburn Rural. For the boys' side, we got Shining Heights, Highland Park, Topeka West, Silver Lake, Washburn Rural, and Roosevelt. So that means Washburn Rural did 2 teams. They had 2 teams work hard enough through the season in that sub-state to be able to make it to the top 8 of their conference. That's an incredible task, an incredibly hard task that I know a lot of our local players and our local coaches understand how important it is that our talent here shows up so well on the big stage. We have a lot of talent that is right here in town and compares to our Kansas City neighbors, and I stand on that. There's a lot of teams there, but we have teams that can beat all of them. So I look forward to seeing that happen here this week. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Councilman Dobler?
I have nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 quick things. I was a little late this evening because I was talking to some 4th grade scouts who had lots of very good questions for me. They asked the tough questions, including one about why there's not a crosswalk next to one of their schools. So heads up to the traffic department. You'll be getting emails soon about why there's not a crosswalk next to the school, so I can give a response back to them. But I appreciate that opportunity, and it's always fun to talk to those kids who really are paying attention. to what's going on in our community on a lot of different levels. Second thing is office hours. I have those Thursday, 3:30 to 5 at Fairlawn Plaza. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hofer.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Just two things. I made a commitment to Omni Circle to promote the cleanup that they are heading up in Central Park. So mark your calendars for Saturday, March 29th. They're going to start at 8 a.m. And people who live in or near Central Park are welcome to participate, as well as anybody else. They're saying, bring friends, come on if you want to help. They're going to clean up mostly in the Central Park area, and they will be addressing trash, weeds, leaf and branch removal and disposal, beautification projects. They'll have a variety of things specified by the time that date comes, I'm quite sure. They'll be working through the morning and then walking from Central Park neighborhood over to the site of the Central Topeka Oasis to check out the progress and talk about that project, and then come back, and Silverbacks are providing a lunch meal. So, way to go, Omni Circle, and everybody is welcome. And last but not least, it's St. Patrick's Day weekend. Councilman Duncan and I will be carrying the city banner in the front of the parade.
Oh, yeah.
The festivities downtown will run from 10 to 3, and there are other celebrations all over town. So the parade is at noon. The route has been changed a little bit this year, so either way, plan to use a garage or park a couple of blocks out and hike in, provide time for that. Typically, there are over 100 floats in the parade, so plan to come early, hang out, enjoy the time. Thank you.
I think my shoulder's getting sore. I don't know if I can. No?
It's pretty lightweight. It's the new one.
Do you still have the one where you can do it by yourself? Where you?
Don't tell him that.
Okay. Well, I was going to mention the parade, but I can't talk to little cloverleaf. I'll just let it go at that. There is a need for us to go into an executive session this evening. If the city attorney will read.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 45 minutes to discuss data related to financial affairs or trade secrets of a corporation considering entering the Topeka market in the housing sector as allowed under KSA 754319B4. The open meeting will resume in the City Council chambers. The following individuals will be necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberation: City Manager Perez and any other individual the governing body finds useful.
Okay, thank you. I've heard the need to go into executive session. Is there a motion?
No.
Motion to approve by Deputy Mayor. The second. I'll second it. Okay, if you call the roll, please.
Aye.
Okay. Everyone, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, no.
Okay, one opposed. Okay.
Too hard.
We will, it's timely because we usually try to take a break around 8 o'clock as well. So we will recess into executive session, be back at 5 minutes after 8. Okay, we've concluded our discussions under executive session. There being no further business come before this body, the meeting is adjourned.